My name is Era, and I'm the host of the Tamil Creator Podcast. I chat with creators from all over the world to share their stories and discuss hot topics in a way that I hope inspires, educates, and entertains you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tamil Creator. I'm your host, Era. Today, I have Janani Shanmuganathan, and she is a criminal defense lawyer. She's appeared frequently at the Ontario Court of Appeal, as well as argued at the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal and Supreme Court of Canada. She's also a partner at a law firm. Janani, thanks for jumping on. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
I think this is a appropriate question given kind of the stage you're at, which is you became a mother not too long ago. And for me, I have a big fascination with like decisions made in early childhood years and like formative teenage years and how that played a part in where you are today. So for you personally, do you know what those moments were that kind of got you to where you are today as a lawyer, and like what drove or started that passion in law for you?
Yeah, it's a hard question. People always ask me, why did you want to become a lawyer and why did you want to become a criminal defense lawyer? And I wish I had like a moment in time that I could point to be like this was the defining moment. But I think for me, as a kid, I've always really enjoyed school and I've always really enjoyed the concept of learning and always bettering yourself and taking in new knowledge. And I feel like the love of learning really helped me go to law school because, going to law school, becoming a lawyer, it takes many years. It takes 7 years of school and then a year or 10 months of articling and then writing the bar exam. So you really have to have the drive and the desire to learn to really get you through to the finish line.
Like I think most people understand that becoming a lawyer, and you just described it, is a long journey. So I guess my question is, did you ever consider any other professions, or was it always like, hey, I got to be a lawyer? Or like while you're on the path where you're like, I wish I chose something else because this is really hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. No, I've always wanted to be a lawyer, and like I said, I don't really know why. Like, I wish I could actually explain to you why it is that I became interested in the law, but it was something I've always wanted to do, and I've never sort of deviated from that path. I've never contemplated a different career, and even in the moments where it's hard, obviously I'm just like, oh, I wish I did something else, but I don't really mean it because I really enjoy doing what I do.
And what specifically drew you? Because in law, there's so many different areas that you could practice in. So what specifically drew you into becoming a criminal defense lawyer?
Yeah, I don't like again, I sound like a broken record. I don't know. I think for me it's I guess this idea of helping the underdog, like helping the person that is needs the help and you're sort of this person that is going to stand by their side while the power of the state goes after them and you really feel like a sense of fulfillment and you feel like you're doing this really important job where a person is trusting you with their liberty, right? Because if you get charged with a crime, you could be sent to jail and this person is turning to you as the person to help protect them from that happening. And I just find it such an important and rewarding job.
Where are there any like misconceptions about, I guess, while you're on this path to becoming a lawyer, and then you actually became a lawyer in kind of the day to day? Because I'll share my thoughts after I hear yours, because I'm obviously not a lawyer, but like I have a certain conception of what I think it is. But were you like, hey, this is not what I expected at all? Or tell me about like anything that was kind of different from what you expected going in.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I would say I was more outgoing and more confident. I was always really sure of myself and sure of my intelligence. And that was something I'd sort of felt, I guess, throughout high school. Undergrad is a bit of awakening moment where suddenly you're among other A-type personalities. And so I was like, oh, I'm not actually as smart as I thought I was. But then when you enter law school, it's like a whole different ball game where everyone is the top of their class. They're all used to getting A's and law school's on a curve. So most people have to get B's. And suddenly I was not at the top of the class. And so I guess during that period of time, it's not like I questioned whether I wanted to be a lawyer, but I sort of questioned, am I ever going to be like a great lawyer or like make it in the profession, right? And I was looking around at people around me and they were so confident and assertive. And at that point in my life, I really wasn't. I was quite shy and not assertive and sort of lacked a bit of confidence. And so I guess I had this idea that in order to succeed in this profession, you had to be this really confident, assertive person, particularly as a criminal defense lawyer. But I'm not that, and I've still made it through this profession. I've been, I've on interesting files, I've got interesting work, and I think you don't really need to have that kind of a personality in order to succeed in the profession. So I think that was a really surprising and obviously a really good thing that I found through the profession.
Are you more, would you say you're more of an introvert than extrovert then?
Yeah, I'm more introverted and I'm like shy, and even if I think I know the answer, in high school, if I thought I knew the answer, my hand would shoot up in class and I would just say it as a matter of fact. But now, even if I'm like 99% sure of the answer, I hang back and I don't want to say anything just in case I'm wrong. And so I think it's interesting to describe myself in this way because it's not really how you would imagine a lawyer to be, right? You'd imagine this lawyer to be super assertive and confident.
Yeah, I think two things there. I think there's a book I read about kind of, I guess I forgot the premise of the book, or sorry, I forgot the title, but the premise of the book was the default world is kind of that's been set up before us is kind of it favors extroverts. So like a lot of what you're fed is you need to be extroverted to do a lot of like things well or like do well in life. But the book
Hmm.
kind of talks about actually introverts are actually better, not better set up, but they're much they're not given the credit. There's a lot of strengths of introverts that extroverts don't have that help them do their job. Like for example, I do a lot of sales as like a startup founder, and I am not extroverted. I would say more on the introverted. Like I might be an extroverted introvert, but I find as an introvert, you're things that are like traits that are useful are like things like you tend to be a good listener. So
Hmm.
when I have a conversation with somebody, I typically am listening 80% of the time and talking 20%, versus with an extrovert, it might be flipped. So just kind of an interesting thing there. And you kind of mentioned the image of a lawyer. I guess my two reference points are TV shows, which are right away probably not the best reference points for a job, but like I'm rewatching Suits. So like for me, the reference point is like Harvey Specter, which obviously is a fictional character, but like, he's unrealistically overconfident about everything. And
Hmm.
like you said, that's probably not most lawyers, or like maybe there's a few, like a small percentage like that. So that was just kind of interesting. Like, and also like another thing about law, and you can probably dig into it like further, is yeah, like I thought it was more of like you had to be a really good debater, but like just like anything, like even a sales presentation, a lot of the actual day of events are a combination of like all this preparation you've done. So I feel like, and you can talk about this, but I feel like a lot of being a good lawyer as well is, doing good research and then putting them together into arguments. Would that be fair? Like that's something that
Yeah,
isn't talked
a
about very
hundred
much.
percent. Yeah, I think it's,
This episode is sponsored by nobody. That's right, nobody. So if you could be kind enough to hit that subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me.
people like on TV shows, what you see is, um, the really cool moments in court, right? Like the aha moments and the way of getting at a witness and cross-examining. But what you don't see is 90% of the work, which is sitting in your office alone preparing for the file. And so the way that I've always approached my job is I want to be the person in the courtroom that knows the file more than everybody else, right? And so that's what I think is where I derive the confidence from is knowing the file really well, knowing it better than everybody else. And so I can be the person in the room that actually knows it really well.
Have you found that as you're a lawyer and like your memory has improved, or have you always had a good memory? Because I imagine like all these facts and things you're putting together in court, it's not like you can kind of breathe off a sheet, or at least again, maybe it's TV shows, but I feel like you have to kind of have it memorized or internalized in a way, or is that not true?
Yeah, I don't think you really have to have it memorized. I think it really just depends on how organized you are. And so I've got sort of summaries of things and cheat notes for myself and references. Like a lot of what you say in court, you can say it, but you just need to make sure that you have like the citation, if you will, of where that fact comes from, so that if you're questioned on that, you actually have a source for it.
Interesting. Okay. I know that when we previously like connected, one thing I found like that fact, and again, it would be interesting, I think, for non-lawyers to kind of hear about it is you were co-counsel for R versus NER, which is the first case over 30 years where the Supreme Court found a mandatory minimum sentence unconstitutional and struck it down from the criminal code. Could you like tell us in like layman's terms or like as best as you can why this was such a big deal?
Sure. So mandatory minimum sentences are just that. It's where Parliament has said for certain kinds of offenses, if you commit the offense, you have to go to jail for X number of years. And the problem with sentences of that nature is that, a judge could have somebody that's in their courtroom and they committed this crime and they're forced to send this person to jail for, say, 3 years, but they don't want to, right? They are able to hear about this person's background. If it's like a really young person, like an 18-year-old, grew up with sort of sympathetic situation, they can't factor in any of these things when deciding what the sentence is. They're constrained by the mandatory minimum and they're forced to send a person to jail. So the reason why this case was important was, the first time in a really long time where the courts say that the mandatory minimum sentence is unconstitutional. We are going to take it out of the criminal code. And if a judge has a person who's committed the offense, they can, sentence the person fitly, right? In a way, or in a fit way, in a way that they think is appropriate. And following Noor, a whole bunch of other mandatory minimum sentences were found unconstitutional. And then just recently, there was a bill that was passed that has removed more mandatory minimum sentences from the code.
I guess for you working on this file or like getting to this moment of the court overturning this particular aspect of the criminal code, how long was that process? Like, how long did you have to, like, I guess, take this case on from beginning to end to have this result happen?
Yeah, so I came on at the Court of Appeal stage, and then it was struck down at the Court of Appeal, and then it was appealed by the Crown to the Supreme Court, and then I stayed on at the Supreme Court level. So it was really cool because in law school you hear about these really important decisions that change the law, right? And it's like you hear about it, you read about it, and now I got to be counsel on one of these really important cases. And it's like one of the cases, it is the case that is talked about for a particular provision of the charter in law school. So it's like a really cool moment for me.
That's pretty cool. So I guess the next batch of students, like a case they might get, well, it might reference the work you did with this case, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's really cool for Tamil students, right? Like Tamil law students, flipping to the front of the page and seeing who counsel were and getting to see a Tamil last name as counsel on the case. I think it's a really cool moment for them as well.
And then I guess as well, like in terms of your career, I think I guess most lawyers do, you worked at a number of other legal firms for like a number of years before branching off into starting your own practice. So is that like kind of a natural evolution of a lot of lawyers, or is it just like what made you decide to take that path for yourself?
So it's pretty common in criminal law to eventually start your firm because there aren't really big firms where you can become a partner at. There's usually smaller firms. You work there for a few years and then you go out and you start your own business. And it eventually reached a point where that's what I did.
I guess with your own practice as well, you know, like my wife has a business, I help her out with it, but that's I guess different from like starting an actual business with your life partner, your husband. So how has the process been of kind of figuring out how to work together? Because not only are you doing work together, you're doing life together. So how do you kind of establish, has it been tricky establishing like boundaries and just, yeah, what's that whole process like?
Yeah, people always ask, "Oh, how do you work with your husband?" But I think for us, he does criminal law as well, and it really didn't make sense for both of us to start two different firms and our own two different businesses and we do the same thing. And I feel like even when we worked at different firms, we would come home and talk about work anyway. And so this is a sort of a natural evolution for us to start a business together. And in many ways, I feel like it's freed up more time because we just talk about work at work. And then once the workday is over, we can just focus on our life versus working at two different places and coming home and talking about work all over again.
That makes sense. And I guess it's also like you're in alignment as well, because when you're building a business with, like, in this case, he's your business partner, um, the tricky part is when like business partners have divergent kind of paths, but versus like you guys are constantly talking about like your personal lives. And I guess it makes it easier to, I guess, align your business trajectory, I assume, as well.
For sure. It's like, any decision we make as part of the business is a family decision. It's also what we're doing that's best for our family. And, you know, I really respect Owen and like I have 100% confidence in him. And so I love to do trials with him because when we do a trial together, we can divide up the work equally. And I completely trust him and his instincts, and he completely trusts me. And so it just feels, I don't know, it feels like a lot of fun when we do things together.
That's awesome. You got the best case scenario, which is like things are well from like a personal and business perspective. It can get very tricky, I know, sometimes with like doing business with family. So I'm glad it worked out. I guess like the business side of your like, I guess not the business side, but like in terms of like your for your business, getting clientele. I know it's like a weird question because it's like, how do you get clients? Most times it's like marketing and things like that. But is that what you do to get clients, or is it like by word of mouth? Like, how did people typically find out about you?
Yeah, I don't I've always been really curious about how people find out about me. And as with any business, your worry is always, am I going to get clients? How am I going to make money? And I've been really lucky so far, and that it's just kind of naturally happened. And it seems to be through word of mouth, and through word of mouth in the sense where other lawyers would refer me clients. So they may have somebody approach them and say, I've got this problem. And that lawyer is like, I don't practice this law, but I recommend Janani, go talk to her. And that seems to be how I mostly get work.
And since like kind of the return of COVID, sorry, like in terms of COVID, kind of the pandemic, kind of not being erased, but being controlled, and obviously like you had a big major life change. Are you still like, are you and your like husband in the belief that in order to do good work, you kind of have to have that physical separation between work and home? Like, do you guys go into an office, or do you guys find it best to kind of work from home and kind of, especially with kind of that life change as well, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so I had a baby about a year ago. And so I actually think, I'm really grateful for the pandemic and the ability to work from home and a lot of things being on Zoom, because I didn't really get much of a mat leave, if anything. And it's really allowed me to be able to work while also be at home with the baby, which is not something I would have been able to do in the pre-COVID world where everything was done in person and at the office. And so I'm actually really grateful for, not grateful for COVID, but sort of grateful for the effects of COVID and then the ability to work from home, because it's allowed me to be able to do both.
And so you don't like, so I guess you still believe that, which I do as well, like that you don't need to necessarily come into a physical office in order to do your best work. I mean, it is helpful, but maybe it's not necessarily the best for everyone, especially maybe introverts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the days where I really need to work, like if I've got a trial that I'm gearing up for, I like to be at the office simply because it's so hard to work from home with the baby. But um, we've been able to run our business while working from home and going into the office when we need to. So I don't really think working from home is a hindrance in any way.
Now, I don't plan to be a client or a future client, but hypothetically, if you had a new client, how does that process work in terms of how do you even know that you want to take the client on? Like I assume that maybe you don't take on every single client that comes to you. But also like when a client works with you, is like, how does it work? Do you charge hourly, retainer? Just like, I guess for people to understand that as well, like the business side.
So
Did you know that every time you left a 5 out of 5 review for this podcast, a Tamil parent lets their child pursue a career in the creative arts? Okay, that's probably not true, but if there's a chance that it is, do you really want to jinx it? Leave a review. Do it for the young creative in you.
if there's a client that contacts me, I set up an initial consultation with them. I don't charge any money for that. It's just to learn what the file is about, to get a feel for the person. And depending on the kind of file that it is, I charge either hourly or um, on a block fee, meaning that sort of you give a lump sum amount for the whole thing. And like I said, it sort of depends on the kind of case that it is. And in terms of deciding whether I take a client on or not, I don't know that I've ever really said no to a client provided they're able to pay. And oftentimes I take on clients even if they're not able to pay. But I think what I always tell other or what I always tell clients is, you shouldn't just talk to me. Like, you should feel free to talk to other lawyers as well to figure out who you really like and who you think you're going to be able to gel with, because it's a really important decision that they're making in their life, and they're entrusting a person with their fate and their liberty. And so you shouldn't just go and hire the first person that you speak to and makes a good sale pitch. You should go and talk to a bunch of people and figure out who it is you really want to represent you.
And you talked about like taking on a client, and even if they don't have money, but if you can't take a client on because you're busy and like they can't pay, what options does somebody have if they don't have the money to get like a criminal defense lawyer like on their own?
Yep. So there is something called Legal Aid Ontario, where there's a certain income cutoff, and I can't recall what it is right now, where if you make money less than that income cutoff, then you can qualify for legal aid. And what legal aid is they give you something called a certificate. And a certificate, you can go to other lawyers and say, I've got a legal aid certificate. And if those lawyers accept certificates, then they can, you can hire them on and you don't have to deal with paying them. Legal aid will pay them. Legal aid pays sort of, you wouldn't make, as a lawyer, you wouldn't make as much money through a legal aid certificate as you would if you were charging the person privately, but you do make some money. And it may just be that, if I can't take a client on for whatever reason, then I try to give them names of other lawyers that I think would be a good fit for them, and hope that it works out. And oftentimes it does.
Also, I feel like just like any industry, like with like the law, the world of law, things are always changing. Like you said, you were part of a case that kind of changed a part of the criminal code. So what kind of things do lawyers, and like I guess specifically yourself, like what do you do to improve your skills and knowledge to kind of make sure you're kind of staying up to date in the world of law at a macro level?
Yep. So criminal lawyers usually have this big conference that takes place in the fall. And if you go to the conference, there's all these seminars and presentations that take place that give you updates on different things that are happening in criminal law. I try to, as much as I can, to just keep an eye on a website that releases new court cases just to see, what's out there. And even things like Twitter or X or whatever it is called, people will share interesting cases, and that's a way to learn what's out there as well.
And I guess for younger people, like you kind of referenced this earlier as well, like younger people aspiring to be lawyers, especially young Tamil women, what's something you would tell them, like a piece of advice that could be useful for them to kind of, if they're considering that path, and then how to be successful, especially when they graduate, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I think what I would tell them is don't self-select out. Like, don't think that, oh, I don't have like the personality of a lawyer, or I'm not confident or assertive, and so I'm not going to do well in this profession. Like, don't self-select out. Like, the law has room for different personalities and different types of people, and so there's going to be room for you as well. And I think, I don't, in terms of like how to succeed in the profession, it sounds like silly, but I always tell people there's like nothing special about me, right? I think that I have been able to achieve success, if you will, just being myself and doing good work. And there's nothing that prevents you from doing the same.
Good advice. I mean, it is tiring being someone that's not yourself. So,
Yeah, it is. And it's like I've been now doing this for 11 years. And I remember in the beginning, like I said, I had this idea of what a lawyer should be and how they should sound and what they should say. And so sometimes I would go to court and I would mirror these types of people or the type of person that I thought a lawyer should be. And it was so exhausting, right? It's exhausting to know the law, know the case, and then put on this personality that's not yours. And then when I made the decision to not do that anymore, and I could just be myself and speak in simple language and not try to use fancy words, I felt so much more comfortable, and I felt like I was able to convey my message a lot better.
it's funny because like talking to like older people, like when I'm saying like 65, so like seniors, I guess, one trait I've noticed among all of them is because in the space I work with, I deal with a lot of seniors. They, I never understood it, but like I'm getting it over time, which is the less you care about what others think, the more liberating your life is. And like I think when you get older and like to their age, it's like you've gone through enough that you just don't care what people think. Like not in a bad way. It's like you're just gonna live life and be who you are and live with the results. So I think that's good advice.
It is good advice.
I don't like the word networking, but like, people call it networking. I call it like, I try to call it making or building relationships, but whatever you call it, because you talked about with your business where you haven't had to like really market and like really worry about kind of customers or clients, I would say. Do you do any kind of like networking, quote unquote, or like client or relationship building to kind of help with, getting lawyers to think of you or other people that could potentially refer clients to you?
Yeah, I haven't done it consciously. Like, I also don't like the word networking because there's this, it just has this like element of fakeness to it, right? Like you're trying to build a relationship for the purposes of achieving an end. And I don't really like
Transactional.
that. Like, right. And so I would rather make a friend, right? And I feel like the more friends you make, or not even friends, but just to have like a genuine conversation with a person, like that's a lot more memorable than just schmoozing with somebody at a party and saying, oh, what do you do? Oh, I work here and I do this. Like that's not anything, right? But if you're able to find something that you can relate to the person with, I feel like it goes a much longer way, and they're going to remember you. And so I find that the more authentic I am and the more effort I make to build a real relationship, it pays off in the end, even though that's not really what I'm working towards.
For you, again, another word I don't like, failure, I call it learning lesson. But for you, have you ever had like any of these in the last 3 to 5 years that's really stuck out? And what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, so I would say, like I said, I had a baby last July, and I feel like people were telling me what having a baby would be like, but I never really understood it. And so I had really filled up my schedule, like work schedule, with things right up until I gave birth and just like almost immediately after, because I was just like, oh, it's no big deal. I'll just like have the baby and do all these things. I'll be like super pregnant and go in and do these things. And then there was a day where I had an appeal that I had to argue at the Court of Appeal. And it was the day before, and I was working and I was so nauseous still. Like I had like really bad nausea all throughout my pregnancy. The baby would be awake from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. So I would never be able to sleep at night. And like I just couldn't do it. Right. And this was one where if I lost this appeal, this person was going to jail for a long time. And so that was a time where I like had to contact the court and be like, I'm sorry, but like I can't do this. Like I need to adjourn it. And so it's not like a failure in the sense where it felt like a failure. It felt like I let myself down for not being able to do something that I thought I could do. But, in hindsight now, I think it was just I was naive and thinking I could do more than I could at the time. And I feel like it's really opened my eyes to being more critical of my schedule and how I plan things, and building in the fact that sometimes my daughter is not going to sleep through the night. And so I'm not going to be able to work in the same way that I always do.
No, that's great advice. And like, as I think, regardless of how many books and articles and videos there are about parenthood and what to expect, it's like some things you just can't, you just can't prepare for. It's like, you just gotta kind of live through it. And yeah, like you said, I think maybe for myself, I think I had the opposite experience where I was like, my life is going to be not a negative in my head, but I was like, I'm going to have no life for like 5 years or something. Is it what
Mhm.
my theory was? But for me, it was like, and obviously, I'm not the one that was carrying our children, so I didn't have the physical challenges my wife did. But it was like a lot better than I thought because I think I did the total opposite of what I guess you're describing, which is I was like, my life's gonna suck, but it hasn't so far. So uh,
Good.
agreed with that though. I guess if you had a chance to go back in a time machine and talk to 16-year-old Janani, what would you tell her?
I would tell her to like slow down. Um, I feel like I really rushed through life in the sense where finished high school, went into undergrad right away, went into law school right away, became a lawyer. Like I think I became a lawyer at like 25, and like there was no point. Like why did I rush through and try to become a lawyer so fast? It just means I'm just going to be working longer in life, right? And so I think I would go back and tell myself there's no rush, right? There's no race to the finish line. Being a lawyer is a long career that I have ahead of me, and there's no reason to have to jumpstart it right away. And you can take a year off, you can take a break, you can do like an exchange somewhere, even if it means like doing an extra year of undergrad or something. Like, I just really wish, I just feel like I wasted my 20s busting my ass only to bust my ass sooner in life, if that makes sense.
No, that's really insightful. I also wish the same thing because I never did any of those things that I saw other people do, um, for the same reasons you did. And like I definitely wish I I did it when I was younger, when you have less responsibilities, like financially, like family wise, all that stuff. Because it's much harder to do the things you're describing when you're like 40 versus like 20, right? So
Hmm.
yeah.
And it's
Um,
like I would look at the people that were doing these things and sounds kind of mean, but sort of be like, oh, what a waste of a year, right? And now I'm
100%.
just like, what are you talking about? That was such an amazing year, and I'm really envious of those people that actually got to do that.
There's this saying, it's like you don't know it's the last day you're about to do something, whatever that is. So like this was in reference to like your childhood, like you didn't know that this would be the last day you hung out with a certain group of friends when you were like
Mhm.
14, or even university. Like I look back and I'm like, I think I really took for granted the day-to-day interactions, which made that like my university experience really fun. I just assumed that would continue, and like you just people tell you life will change and like you'll get responsibilities, people will kind of drift apart, and you don't believe them. It's like my parent, like all the things my parents told me when I was
Mhm.
younger, I was like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. Everything
Yeah.
you said was correct. Should have listened.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing is I guess we have kids and we can hopefully share that experience and let them do those things that we couldn't do or we didn't choose to do.
Yeah, I hope so.
That's another thing. It's a random side note, but I guess being a parent, I'm not sure if you have the same experience. I feel like I've done a lot of re-examining of my own childhood and upbringing as I've dealt with like our kids, because I'm like, it just like opens up memories and just things that I didn't deal with. So I don't know, just
I feel like I have taken up this part-time job of reading like every parenting book that exists, right? Like I just feel like being a parent now, it really puts this critical lens on your own childhood and what worked and what didn't, and what you want to fix going forward, and the things that you want to carry forward and the things that you want to change. It's just I never really stopped to examine things that took place or even really appreciated that things could have been done differently.
yeah, it's like there's a show I watched, This Is Us, where there's a character in the show. He's viewed a certain way at the beginning and like much drastically, much differently at the end. And it's like my parents, like the lens I had when I was younger, where I viewed them as like, oh, they're just like I can't have any fun. It's all about like education, blah blah blah. And now that I'm at this age with like my kids, I'm like it's a way different lens. I'm like, oh, way more
Yeah.
grateful. I'm like, I should like be bowing down to their feet for everything they've done. Like obviously there's things they could have done better, but it's just like it's crazy how like life and experience gives you a different lens of how you view people. So yeah.
Yeah, and I also, being the child of immigrants, right? Being Tamil and the history that we have being Tamil, and our parents having left this country where they grew up and had careers and jobs and family, and moving to a different country where they don't speak the language and starting from scratch. Like, I look at my life now and I'm like, imagine if I had to move to some small town in Germany where nobody spoke English and I had to start from scratch. My degrees weren't recognized, all this kind of stuff. Like, it must have been so hard. And so I think it's really made me appreciate that our parents and their generation had this, they had like a real trauma that they went through, and it probably like filtered down to us, and the way that we approach the world is because it was a whole new country that they were experiencing.
Yeah, I can't even imagine simple things like when we travel now, like when you, I guess we all travel now, it's like I go to a new country, if I don't know anything, it's like I just go to Google Maps and I'll find my
Mhm.
way. Like our parents had to like they had this,
Yeah,
it
the
feels
map,
almost like,
right?
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
not even a map. It's like go to this telephone, call this person, wait here. It just
Hmm.
seems crazy to me, but like they did that and it's like you said, it's like pretty amazing.
Hmm.
And like you said, I don't know if it's like true or not. Like I read a book around like trauma being able to be passed genetically. And I don't know how true that is. There's like studies, I guess, that prove some of that. But yeah, like our parents went through like a trauma, both like where like if they're from Sri Lanka, especially, and moving here. So I'm sure like maybe some of it was passed to us as well. I don't know, but just again, like you said, remarkable.
Yeah. I feel
Uh,
like, part of what sort of I guess I'm working on as a parent now, not wanting to pass it on to my children, but like sometimes I have this like irrational nagging fear in the back of my mind that like everything I've worked so hard for is suddenly going to get yanked away from me and I have to start scratch from scratch again. And like that can only be because of my parents' experience moving here, right? Like where else does that come from?
that's a great point. I guess we look back and like now looking forward in terms of your personal legacy, how would you want to be remembered by your friends and family?
Um, I think someone who like was authentic and wasn't just saying things or doing things for the sake of it or because of this image they're trying to build for themselves, but because that's just who they are. I think like the word authentic and genuine, those are words that I really want people to think about when they think of me.
Love it. That's a good segue into the final part of the podcast. It's a speed round. It's called Creator Confessions. I've been told it's fun, but it's also kind of like it feels like you're doing therapy. Hopefully, it's more of the fun part. But yeah, I'm going to say a bunch of statements, and you're going to tell me the first thing that pops to mind. Ready?
Sure.
Favorite Tamil food?
Put the roti.
Okay, there's a fire or flood, and you only have time to take two things with you. What are they?
My baby and my dog.
It can't
Sorry,
be. It's going to be inanimate objects. Assume your baby and
honestly,
dog are going
like,
with you.
yeah, it's weird. Like nothing. I feel like I'm not wedded to anything that I'd want to take.
Surprise! Most people say cell phone and like I forgot the other answer. Cell phone and something else. Okay,
There's something almost like when you said that, I'm like, oh, it's like I kind of don't want anything. It'd be such a freeing thing to just leave everything behind.
got it. Something that scares you.
Oh my God, I'm like bad at like the immediate stuff. Nightmares? I don't know.
Insecurity that you have.
Um, Not doing a good enough job for my clients.
Favorite TV show you're watching.
Ooh, I forget the name of the show, unfortunately. It's a show that I'm watching with my husband. I don't remember the name.
What is it about?
It's like a show where it's like eh, they're in this like dome thing and then they're all stuck there and the world had ended or something and then so like once in a while people go out and it's like what's out in the world, is there
Oh,
anything
wow.
or is it all dead? I forget what it's called.
Sounds
I don't
interesting.
know. Yeah,
That,
it is
that question
interesting. I'll let you know.
that
Yeah.
question is part market research for myself on like shows to watch. So I will check that out. A place you're itching to travel to.
Italy, which we're actually going to in a couple weeks.
Amazing. Fellow Tamil creator you want to give a shout out to.
Oh, I've been like on or watching on Instagram someone called like Ria's mom. She's like a Tamil woman who's like a mom and giving a lot of helpful advice, which I've really, really found useful so far.
Favorite childhood memory.
Going to Sri Lanka.
Something you like to do for fun outside of work.
Read.
Favorite movie of all time. Could be Tamil, English, or both.
I'm so bad at these like movie questions. I really like Lion King, honestly.
Great movie. What's a decision you've been putting off for a while?
Getting my hair cut short or not.
Who's somebody you'd love to have on your personal invisible counsel that you could have access to 24/7?
So there's this really famous lawyer who's like passed away now. His name is G. Arthur Martin, and like I would love to be able to pick his brain if I could.
That just reminds me, another lawyer-centric show, Lincoln Lawyer, like the TV series. Again, probably not realistic, but love these like legal shows. Um, what's a purchase you've made that you splurged on in the last couple of years that you have no regret about? Money can be hard to come by, but here is a $100 opportunity for you. Join my free newsletter for free exclusive content and a free chance to win $100 when I hold special draws. Did I mention that it's free?
Like everything for my baby, I feel like it's all like stupidly expensive, but I also stupidly love.
Pet peeve,
Um, People who are fake.
breach. A person or celebrity that you look up to.
uh, Man, like I feel like this is mom brain must be. I look up to my husband. I know it's kind of silly, but I really do.
That's a great relationship to have. If you knew that you were going to die tomorrow, a regret that you would have.
Not spending more time with my family.
And a person, I guess I'll say person slash celebrity again, whose life that you'd want to experience for just one day.
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I feel like you're supposed to say the first thing that pops into your head, but like, I don't know who would be. Honestly, like Christopher Columbus, like what would it have been like to just like be on a boat and stumble upon like a new world?
Got it. What's a book you've read or a podcast you've listened to that's had an impact on you?
I've been reading The Montessori Toddler, which I think has really helped me frame my approach to parenthood.
A belief, behavior, or habit that's improved your life.
I've been trying to just like put my phone away when I'm with my daughter to see so I can try to be more present.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that parents struggle with, including
Mhm.
myself. So that's a good one. And finally, a piece of advice that you'd give to your fellow aspiring Tamil creators out there.
Be yourself, and I think that's the best ingredient for success.
Love it. Well, that concludes the podcast, Janani. Thank you so much. I think it's been very insightful. If someone's listening to this episode and is inspired or just wants to connect with you, what's the best way for someone to reach out to you?
They can go on my website. It's www.gsllp.ca, and you can find out more about me and my email address as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for jumping on. And for everyone listening, as always, thank you guys for reaching out with feedback and just listening to every episode.
Thanks again.